Good afternoon, class. As you are already aware during our first meeting, my name is Babura from the Department of English and Literary Studies, Bayero University, Kano. And in continuation with our earlier discussions or lecture of GSP use of English, that is GSP 1201 slash GSP 2201, which we've already covered discussions in vocabulary development. Today, we're going to continue from where we stopped. That is, today we are going to start from Module 2, which talks about basic grammar. That is the continuation of our last meeting. You see, class, today our discussion is going to center around Module 2, which talks about basic grammar. This module has some basic objectives. The module is set out to make you students understand the basic rules and the conventions of using words in isolation and the structures and punctuated marks for effective spoken and written communication. You see, there is no language or any other language that operates without grammar, because each and every language has a kind of set down rules, set down standard that controls your reading, that controls your writing, that controls your speaking or your speeches. Therefore, this model centered around these rules and regulations, guidelines governing the use of language, that is in terms of spoken and written communication in English. The model focuses on four different items. That is to say, the first item is going to center on word classes. That is to say, in other words, part of speeches or part of speech. That is where you can have noun, you can have verb, you can have adjective, among others. These are what we call word classes. That is part of speech. And also, the next segment of this module is going to center around the sentence types. That is, what are the types of sentences? That is, functionally and structurally. And then from there, we also move to the issue of tenses in English. There are so many tenses. That is, we have three, and then they were also divided into different classifications. From after discussing the tenses, then the next category or the next thing we're going to look at is the issue of punctuation marks. Punctuation marks, as you can see from the discussion. So let's start by issue of word classes or part of speech. You see, class, words are bricks or erecting structures in any meaningful human communication. You can never communicate without words. Words are a kind of building blocks, a kind of maybe what we call ingredient that one uses to communicate meanings between himself and maybe the receiver or the listener. Words in English are classified according to the functions they perform in sentences. That is, each and every word has a particular function to perform during communication purposes. Therefore, for instance, class, some words' main function is to name things, while others replace the naming words in sentences. That is, maybe we'll talk about pronouns. Some expresses actions, while others modify the actions in discussions or in speeches or in writings. Some connect other words, while others indicate relationship between words and other words in discussions or in writings or in speeches. Therefore, class, you can see each and every word has a specific role to play in dealing with the English language. Traditionally, there are 8 parts of speech in word classes in English. That is, we have nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjection. So these are what we call the traditional classifications of part of speech or word classes. Apart from this, there are other classifications such as that of Hudson 1996 that identifies determiners and coordinators as subordinators and subordinators as additional classes. While also you can look at Quack and Greenbaum 2006 that also add on these earlier existing classifications with demonstratives to make 10-word classes in English. Therefore, we have so many views on what are the, or rather, how many parallel speeches do we have in English. There is earlier view, which is called the traditional view. There is that of maybe Hudson 1996, and there is also that of Quack and Greenbaum 2006. Therefore, class, broadly words are divided into open class and closed class. That is, this part of speeches or part of speech, these word classes are divided into two categories, where we have the open class and the closed class. Because the former, which is open class, accepts new members. That is, there are always new innovations, there are always new members that it accommodates. While the latter, which is the closed class, is, as the name implies, always remain closed. It doesn't welcome any new member into that particular or into that classifications. Open class items are nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. When you look at noun, there are always new names. Maybe if you look maybe 50, 500 years back, there's no name like Mufida, like Ilham. These are new names. Had it been the class is closed, so there is no room for welcoming new names. So also adjectives. There are always adjectives. There are always new nouns that adjectives do modify. Therefore, if adjective is closed, then there is no way an adjective can welcome new member. So also verbs and adverbs, they always welcome new members of that classes or categories. Then, secondly, we also have closed class items such as pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjunctions. This category class always remain closed, as the name implies. They don't welcome any new member. When you look at 50, 60, 100 years back, they always remain where they are. Let's say pronouns such as I, you, them, they, among others. All these kind of pronouns always remain where they are, and they don't have any new member that is coming into this category. So also in prepositions such as, let's say, but, such as with, such as in, among others. All these are also prepositions that doesn't welcome new members in this category or class of closed class items. And also interjection and conjunctions are also part of this class that doesn't welcome new members. And let us start looking at them, maybe the classifications or the word classes, that is starting from open class words one by one. When you look at noun class, as we talk about, nouns are names given to things, ideas, persons, concepts, etc. They always refer to naming words. Nouns are classified into classes such as proper nouns, which name specific things such as maybe Musa, Lagos, Monday, among others. There are also common nouns. That common nouns class refer to general names given to persons or things, or the same kind alike proper nouns. For example, class, when you look at woman, in woman we can have Aisha, we can have Hafsat, we can have Chinyere as a common noun because they refer to what? General names. Let's talk about chair. There are wheelchair, there are armchair, there are plastic chair. So all this, the name chair is a general name, as you can see. Then we can also have abstract nouns. This kind of nouns or classification of nouns refer to the names of things that we can not see, we cannot touch, such as maybe qualities, emotions, actions, and conditions. For example, you cannot see joy, you cannot see or touch anger, you cannot touch or see honesty, rather also you cannot see happiness or beauty. So all these categories of nouns are called abstract nouns because they are not visible, they are not touchable, you cannot see them, that's why they are so called, as the name implies, abstract. We also have concrete nouns that refer to names of things that we can see, we can touch. For example, let's say we have desk. You can see desk, you can see chair, and you can touch them. You can see pencil. We also have collective noun, which also are used for a group of collection, that is, of things. Groups may consist of people, let's say it can be objects or animals. For example, a collective noun is regarded as whole. For example, staff. When we say staff, it includes principal, vice principal, members of staff, messengers, cleaners. All these are staff. Also family. In family we have mother, we have father, we have daughters, we have sons. All these are what are referred to as collective names. Hope class you understand it. So these are the uh, some of the examples of nouns or open class system we have. Then the next member of open class system is an adjective. Adjectives class are words which are used to describe a noun or pronoun. In English, adjectives generally come before the nouns to qualify them. E.g., hunter is a noun, then we can have brave hunter. So brave there is an adjective that what that qualifies the noun. We also have girl as the noun, uh, but we can have beautiful as an adjective that qualify the word girl. So these are some of the examples. But remember, class, some adjectives also or adjectives are also further classified into many categories. We have interrogative adjectives such as what those that ask questions. For example, whose biro is that? Which of my auntie is dead? These are the examples of interrogative. So the word whose and that and also which are adjectives, but they are called interrogative adjectives. Also, we also have possessive adjectives, which are used to indicate ownership. Who owns what? Such as my aunt is dead. My there is an adjective. His car is in good condition. His there is what? An adjective that indicates possession. Then the next category is descriptive adjective. These adjectives give the quality of the nouns they describe. For example, he bought a car. Which car? Brown car. So the brown there is an adjective that talks about or that describes or talks about the quality. They are very happy. So they can be happy, but what? Happy there is what? Is an adjective that modifies the situation of that particular pronoun. Okay, class. Still in continuation of our discussion on open class types of part of speech, we are going to also talk about some functions of adjectives. You can see one of the functions of adjectives is attribution. Adjectives do attribute. Attributive adjectives come before noun, they qualify. For example, you can have the word lady and the man, maybe for example. When you have the fair lady and the big man, the word fair there is doing an attributive or performing an attributive function. That is lady, which of the lady? Fair lady. And then man, which of the man? Big man. So the big man and the fair lady is a typical example of attribution or attributional function of an adjective. Then the next function of an adjective is predicative function. It performs the function of predicate. Predicative function class or predicative adjectives occur after the finite verb of a sentence. For example, your daughter is very beautiful. That is, beautiful there is an example of predicative adjective. And then we are quite happy. Happy there is an example of predicative adjective. Then an adjective also performs the function of doing comparison or comparison of adjectives. Adjectives are used in so many instances to indicate degrees of comparison. There are three such degrees in English of comparing an adjective. That is to say, we have the comparative degree, and then we have the first one is positive degree, and then we have the comparative degree, and then we have the superlative degree. For example, class, when you take the word tall, that is, tall indicates the positive degree of an adjective, while the comparative degree of the word tall is taller, and then the superlative form of that, the same word, is tallest. The same thing applies to good as positive, better as comparative, and best as superlative. And then intelligent as positive, more intelligent as comparative, and then most intelligent as the superlative form of an adjective. Let us move to the next open class, which is verb, or the issue of verbs. You see, class, verbs are action words, as the name implies. A verb is either a finite or non-finite verb. That is, verb can either be a finite or non-finite. Finite verbs agree with the subjects of the sentence in which they are what? They are used, and they show the tense. For example, finite verbs are grouped into lexical and auxiliary verbs. Lexical verbs are what we call major verbs in a sentence, and is divided into that is, lexical items is divided into what? How many? Transitive verb and what? Intransitive verb, linking verbs. So lexical verbs is the major verb as we talk about. Transitive verb is usually followed by an object. They are the kind of verbs that what? That accept or that require an object to complete their meaning. For example, the girl saw a madman. When you have the sentence, the girl saw, and keep quiet, the sentence will not be meaningful unless there is something that will fill up the gap so that it can make sense. Therefore, madman there as an object indicates that transitive verb requires an object to complete its meaning, while an intransitive verb is a kind of verb that doesn't require any object to complete its meaning. For example, when you take my mom died, in this sentence there is no any object, and still the sentence remain meaningful. If you like, you can add last month. That still doesn't maybe is not a requirement for the sentence to have meaning, but rather it will also complement the meaning of that particular verb. Another example is, let's say it rained yesterday. It rained yesterday. It rained, and you keep quiet. When you say it rained and keep quiet, still the sentence remain meaningful. Only that if you want to add more salt or more sugar to the sentence or more complement, then you can add anything to still direct the meaning, but not necessary as one of the requirement of the verb. Then we have what we call as linking verbs. Linking verbs are verbs that connect the subject of a sentence to its what? Complement or predicate to indicate the state of being of the subject. For example, lawyers are liars. Are there is what? Is a linking verb. Are there is a linking verb. My daughter is pretty. Is there is telling us about the state of being of the daughter. Therefore, is there in this sentence is a linking, or is what we call a linking verb. Then we also have auxiliary verbs. Auxiliaries are verbs that help the lexical verbs to form tenses or to indicate doubt or possibility, necessity, or even obligation. Auxiliary verbs are of two types. There are what we call primary auxiliaries and modal auxiliaries. Primary auxiliaries are verbs, or rather, three in number. That is, we have do, we have, and we have verb be. And all these three act as both lexical and auxiliary verbs in so many instances. For example, when they act as lexical verbs, we can have, let's say, a sentence such as, she is here. Is there is what serves as a lexical verb. We also have Musa does the cleaning. Does there is serve the purpose, or has served the purpose of what? A lexical verb. I had a boring experience there. Had there in the sentence serves as what? As a lexical verb. Then they also serve as auxiliary verbs, such as maybe Ladidi is cooking. The main verb there is what? Cooking. Is serving as an auxiliary in the sentence. Maybe I did not find it difficult to teach. Did there in the sentence serves as what? Auxiliary verbs. Or as an example of auxiliary verb. So these are some of the examples of above serving the function of lexical verbs and also as auxiliary verbs. Then we also have modal auxiliaries that include can, could, will, would, shall, should, may, might, etc. That is, all these are examples of what we call modal auxiliaries, and they are used in different sentences to represent a verb in the sentence. Then we also have non-finite verbs. Non-finite verbs are verbs that are not restricted in any way in tense and number. They are what? Participle. Example. The examples are that of, let's say, participle, gerund, and infinitive. That is, these are the little about the verb. And then the next class, still under open class, is an adverb. An adverb class is a word used to modify or qualify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. An adverb usually answers one of these questions, such as, that is, when, where, how, and why. These are some of the basic questions that an adverb asks. They are classified into the following classifications. We have adverb of time that tells us when the action takes place, that is, now, often, late, soon, sometimes, recently, etc. For example, he will write his exam tomorrow. That is, it tells us what? When. Musa was here last week. You can see where adverbs come out. Then the next classification is adverb of place. This tells us where the action takes place. Where? That is down, here, there, forward, backward, etc. Then cars are parked maybe outside. So it tells us what? Where. We have settled the matter here. So it is also an example of an adverb of place. Then we also have what we call adverb of manner. An adverb of manner tells us how an action takes place, the manner with which an action takes place. Very, quiet, well, correctly. It is, for example, it is well written. It is quite unfortunate. Or let's say it is quite beautiful. It is correctly observed. Etc. So these are kind of manners with which an action took place. Let's say Musa answered the question correctly. She danced well. So you see, all this tells us the manner with which an action takes place. The next discussion is going to be on closed class. This closed class, as we told you earlier class, or as we discussed earlier, they are the kind of classes of words that remain closed, as the name implies. They don't welcome new members. So the first member of this class is, let's say, pronoun. You see, pronouns class, as discussed earlier, are words which are used, or which we use in place of a noun, so that we do not have to repeat the noun over and over and over again. For example, Abdul went to visit his friend Sani, but Abdul did not find Sani at home. You can see the sentence looks clumsy and so repetitive in nature. So in the above sentence, we can use pronouns in place of the proper nouns. So the sentence will now read, let's say Abdul went to visit his friend Sani, but he did not find him at home. So you see, this sentence look more grammatical, look more beautiful, and even more communicating. There's no repetition and that kind of redundancy in it. So the words he and him are pronouns. Others are she, her, we, they, I, them, it, and you. These are some of the examples of pronoun and how they are used. Then we also have classes of pronouns. Pronouns class are classified into several different classes, such as personal pronoun, demonstrative pronoun, interrogative pronoun, possessive pronoun, relative pronoun, reflexive pronoun, and indefinite pronoun, etc. So there are so many classifications of such pronouns. Let's talk about personal pronouns. Personal pronouns stand for persons, as the name implies. They can be either in the plural or singular form. When they are in the third person singular, personal pronouns show gender, whether masculine or feminine. Another feature of the personal pronoun is person, that is personal pronoun. Person is a grammatical category of pronoun. That is, up to 3 persons are involved in discourses. That is to say, when a person speaks to you about someone else who may not necessarily be present, the speaker is the first person. You, the listener, is the second person, and the one spoken about is the what? The third person. Here are examples of personal pronouns. Let's say first person pronoun. I, we, my, our, me, us, ours, mine. This is taken about the first person, that is myself or ourselves. The second person talks about somebody who is not present, such as you. I mean, who you are talking to. That is the second person, such as you, singular, you, plural, you are singular or you are as a plural, yours as singular, and maybe yours as a plural. Then the third person is the person who may not necessarily be there or be present, such as he, she, it, his, hers, among others. So these are the example of the third person singular. Then the next category or classification of pronoun is what we call demonstrative pronoun. These are pronouns that point out a particular person or thing. They include this, the singular, and then this, the plural this, that, and maybe those. Example, that is an interesting lecture. This is Bayero University, Kano. Those are still in use. These are bad eggs. So the word that, this, those, and these in these sentences are what we call demonstrative pronouns. That is why they are so called, as the name implies. Now, we also have interrogative pronouns that are used to ask questions, such as what, who, whom, whose, and which. For example, what is a favorite color? Who gave you my book? Which is yours? Whose bag is this? So the word what, who, which, whose are all examples of interrogative pronouns. Then we also have possessive pronouns. That is, for example, words such as mine, yours, hers, ours. As you can see in these sentences, this book is mine, the choice is yours, that pen is hers, these glasses are ours. So you can see all these are examples that indicates what? Possession. Then the next category is relative pronouns. This relative pronouns class, as the name implies, are similar or interrogative in nature, except that relative pronouns introduce the subordinate clauses, call relative clauses, and at the same time connect them with main clauses. For example, he is the lecturer that chased his student away. So this is relating events. The lecturer, which lecturer that chased his student away? This is the girl, which girl? Whose father was arrested. So whose there is what? Is relating events. So you can see how they are so called. Then the next category is what we call reflexive pronouns. When pronouns combine with suffixes such as self, selves, they form what we call reflexive pronouns. They are called reflexive because they refer back to the subject of the sentence. For example, she is deceiving herself. You can see how self goes back to she. Musa locked himself. So you can see how the word self refer back to Musa. That is, they ended up coming back to the subject of the sentence. The next class, still in closed class systems, is the prepositions. You can see class, preposition is the word, or is a word with a pronoun, or a noun, or a preposition is a word used with a pronoun or a noun to show the relationship with some other words in the sentence. A preposition class together with a noun or pronoun, which is its object, form what is called a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase. For example, Abdul gave the book to Mariam. Mariam cooked some food for Abdul. So you can see to and for there are what? Examples of prepositions. So in the above sentences, we can say to and for are prepositions, and to Mariam and for Abdul are what? Prepositional phrases. Other prepositions are what? Such as, examples such as in, under, out, with, of, down, apart from, as far as, on top of, in front of. These are few examples of prepositions. There are many of them. These are just some few of them. Now, we also have conjunctions as another example of the closed class system. A conjunction class is a word whose only function is to link words together. Phrases, clauses, and sentences. Their main function is to link up words, phrases, and clauses. There are three types of conjunction. That is, we have coordinating conjunction, we have subordinating conjunction, and we have correlative conjunctions. These are the three types of conjunctions we have in English. Let's start with the first one. Coordinating conjunctions link elements that are of equal status or rank. In other words, they link equivalent grammatical structures. They link words, phrases, or clauses. For example, and serves to add an item to another. For example, Musa and Isa are dancing. So you can see Musa, Isa are words that are of equivalent, of the same category, of the same rank. That's why they are what we use conjunction to link them together. But serves to another example is but. But serves to provide a contrast. That is, two contrasting views. He invited her, but she refused. So invitation and refusal, you can see they are what? They are contrary. So they are used. We use but to link them up. We also have or. We have so. There, you can see from the sentences there, we have many examples of coordinating conjunctions. Then we also have subordinating conjunctions. These are words that connect subordinate clauses to main clauses. They include words such as if, since, because, as, unless, before, while, though, etc. For example, let's see the example in sentences. I have been here since 4 o'clock. We are going to write a test before they come. I bought a new car because I need it. So you can see since there, because, and before there all serve the function of subordinating conjunctions. They provide conditions. Then we also have correlative conjunctions. These are pairs of words used as conjunctions. They always appear together. When correlative conjunctions are used, the two items involved should be immediately succeeded the correlatives. For example, example of correlatives are, let's say, not only but also, neither no, either oh, not but, both and, such as. You can see this all usually appear in the same sentence. They what? They co-occur with each other in sentence. For example, both Amina and Aminu passed the exams. That is the first example. The second one is, she's not only a brilliant student but also talented. He's not only a brilliant but also what? Talented student. You either leave this class or keep quiet. So you can see how they appear in sentences. This is how they appear, and this is how they serve this kind of purposes in discussions. The last class, which belongs to closed class system or the closed class type, is interjection. Class interjection is an exclamation, or we can call it an exclamation. It expresses feelings or surprises, pain, fear, anger, joy, agreement, admiration, warning, and or disagreement. Anything that can move you, that can arouse your feelings, can be termed as interjection, which is exclamatory in nature. Therefore, class, examples such as, I'm sorry, certainly, Nonsense. I can't believe it. Good. God of mercy. So you can see how you speak with some exclamations. These kind of expressions represent a class of words that is termed as interjunction. Alright, students, we are now still going to talk about the other segment, which is to do with the sentence and sentence types. You know, before we move forward to discuss the concept of sentence, it is good we follow and explain the hierarchical order of elements in English in terms of grammatical rank. A word is the least element, followed by a phrase, one step above, then a clause, followed by a sentence at the largest element. You see, things in language are arranged in their order of importance, or are arranged hierarchically. Words usually in the smallest unit, followed by a phrase, and then a clause, and then finally the sentence as the largest element. This simply implies that a sentence can be divided into clauses, a clause can be split into phrases, and a phrase can be broken into words. Therefore, words come together to form phrase, and then phrases come together to form a clause, and then clauses also can come together and form sentence or sentences. Um, you see, remember our previous discussion centered on words. As such, or due to this, we'll briefly explain a phrase and a clause before moving on to to discuss a sentence that and talk about its structure and function, because there is no way one can start building without having a foundation. Therefore, if we just jump up to discuss a sentence without talking about words, phrases, and sentences, then there is every likelihood some students may be lost, or can easily have a kind of gap or a communication gap may arise in our discussions. Therefore, class, when we talk about praise, a praise refers to a group of related words which does not convey a complete meaning because it has no subject and a finite verb. For example, a noisy class, a conducive atmosphere for learning, a good idea, behind the door. All these are examples of praises, and praises or praise has a number of types. A praise can be divided into different types, such as maybe noun phrase, adjectival phrase, verbal phrase, adverbial phrase, or prepositional phrases. There are so many phrases, depending on what leads the, or rather, what serves as the head or particle of the phrase. As can be observed, class, this classification is closely tied to the function of different word classes or part of speech, as we have discussed earlier. When a sentence capture a noun, it is noun phrase. An adjective, then we can call it adjectival phrase. Verb, we call it verbal phrase. Adverb, we call it adverbial phrase, and then prepositional phrase as indicate, rather go with what preposition. Therefore, that's why you can see from the names they take those kind of part of speech as we have discussed earlier. Then coming down to clause, like a phrase which functions solely as a word. A clause is a group of words containing a subject, a verb, a modifier, and in some instances an object. For example, class, Mary is there is a clause of its own. While he was driving a car, although we came late. So you can see, let's take these three. A clause is broadly classified into two. We have an independent clause, which is in some instances called the main clause or the principal clause that expresses a complete thought or idea, and that is why it is called independent. While a dependent clause is also sometimes called a subordinate clause, which depends on the main clause in complex sentences for a complete meaning. It cannot have meaning of its own, but rather it has to be joined together with the principal clause or the main clause for it to have meaning in a complex sentence. Therefore, class, let's take example of independent clause. Some students are waiting outside. Abdul caught the ball. That is for an independent clause. Example of dependent clause can be, although we came late, the program has not commenced. Therefore, although we came late is dependent. The program has not commenced is independent. Therefore, these two have to come together for them to have meaning. Because let's say, although we came late, can this make sense? No. But unless it is joined together with the independent clause, that's the only way the sentence can have a complete meaning and can make a sense. Then another example is Hafsat came to see Abdul before the reply took up. So Hafsat came to see Abdul is an independent clause, while before the reply took off is a dependent clause. Because when you take before the reply took off alone, it cannot have complete meaning. It cannot make sense. Another example is, for example, when the bus broke, as dependent clause, we were all worried, then independent. Therefore, when the bus broke is an example of dependent clause, which cannot have meaning without where we were all worried. Because we were all worried there is the independent clause, or is the principal clause, or is the main clause. So first clause there can only have meaning with the help or assistance of the second clause. Hope you understand in class. Now, with these little discussions we had on phrases, clauses, and even words, I'm sure now you can have a full grasp or understanding of what we call a sentence. You see, class, a sentence, is a group of words with a subject and a finite verb, which conveys a complete meaning. A sentence should start with a capital letter and ends with one of the terminal punctuation marks. When we say terminal punctuation marks, we mean punctuations that are used to end a sentence. They appear at the end of a sentence as the name implies. That's why they are called terminal. They are used to terminate a sentence, to bring an end to a sentence. That's why they are called terminal punctuations, such as exclamation mark, such as full stop, such as question mark. All these are examples of what we call terminal punctuations. Let's take examples as follows. Muhammad has traveled to Benin. Then you see we have full stop there. No, Muhammad has not traveled to Benin. You see, exclamation mark. How much is this trousers? Question mark. So you can see how we have three different examples with a number of punctuations that talk about or that terminate a sentence. And as such, for a group of words to be sentenced, it should pass the following criteria. That is, there are some criteria that for a sentence to be a sentence, it has to pass through some of the following criteria. One, it should convey a complete thought. If a sentence cannot make a complete thought or complete meaning, then it is not a sentence. Words should be arranged in an appropriate grammatical pattern. No sentence can be grammatical without arranging words in an appropriate grammatical pattern, because no language that operates without a set down rule or standard. Therefore, it must follow it must conform with the standard of the language. That is to say, an appropriate arrangement or grammatical pattern should be followed when trying to make or construct a sentence. It should also be given with a capital begin with a capital letter and end with what? An appropriate punctuation mark. A sentence must begin with a capital letter, and if it is a question, it must end with a question mark. If it is a statement, it must end with what? A full stop. If it is an exclamation, then it has to end with what we call exclamation mark. Then let's look at the types of sentences. Sentences could be classified according to their structure, that is, arrangements of clauses. That is how they can be classified, or based on the what functions they perform. That is, sentence. What we are trying to make, or the point we are trying to make here, class, is that sentence can be divided, or rather can be classified according to structure, that is how sentence is structured, and then what functions it performs in writing or in speeches or in communication. So these are the two classifications of sentences that can be classified on either structure or the function or the role a sentence play in speech or writing or in communication. Therefore, class, taking or rather talking about the structural classification of sentence is divided into how many? Into four classifications. The first one is what we call the simple sentence. A simple sentence, class, is mostly an independent clause with a subject and a finite verb containing a single idea. For example, Umar is sleeping. This is simple sentence. They have all signed the attendance sheets in the previous lecture. How old is the university? So you see, Umar is sleeping is what? One sentence. They have all signed the the attendance sheets in the previous lecture. That is another what? Another simple sentence. How old is the university? Is another simple sentence. Even though it is a question, but what? It is a simple one. Then we have also what we call compound sentence. In this sentence type, there should be two or more main or independent, or what we call independent clauses connected or joined together by a coordinating conjunction, such as maybe and, or, but, yet, etc. So they have to be sentences that are independently joined by using any of these conjunctions. For example, Ali heard the explosion and he called the police. Ali heard the explosion is one main clause, and as a conjunction, he called the police as another independent clause. Another example is Mariam washed the dishes as one main or independent clause, and she dried them, another main clause, joined together by and as a conjunction. So that is how one can understand that this sentence is compound sentence or not. And the next classification is what we call complex sentence. A complex sentence, class, is a sentence that contains one independent or main clause with one or more dependent clauses duly connected with an appropriate conjunction. Yes, because even though the complex sentence has a combination of both dependent and independent clauses, they must be joined together by an appropriate conjunction. Else, the meaning may be tampered with, or we may end up not having the appropriate meaning we set out to achieve. Uh, that is for complex sentence. Then the last classification we have is a compound complex sentence. Compound complex sentence, class, is a sentence that contains two or more independent clauses plus one or more dependent clauses joined together by a conjunction. For example, let's take this example. John is a serious student. He always goes to the library to read, but he still fails most of his exams because of his overconfidence. So you can see here we have a number of dependent clauses and a number of independent clauses. Therefore, let's look at them. John is a serious student is one independent clause. He always goes to library to read, another independent clause, but he still fails most of his exams, another independent clause, because of his overconfidence is what? Dependent clause. So you can see here we have three independent clauses and we have one dependent clause. So at least in every compound complex sentence, one must have minimum of two independent clauses and minimum one dependent clause. So, but this is not only the limit. You can provide as many as you want. You can make them three, you can make them four, but the minimum number is this that I already mentioned. Now, that is, we talk about the sentence types in terms of what? Structure. Now we are going to look at the sentence types according to function. According to the function they perform in writing, in speeches, or in communication. Now, in another perspective, class, sentences are classified into 6 types according to functions, or according to functions they perform, or the role they play in communication. For example, class, we have declarative sentence, we have interrogative sentence, we have exclamatory sentence, we have wish, we have command, and request. So these are the 6 classifications of sentences according to the function they perform. Now let's start by the first one, which is called declarative or statement. This sentence is a statement which affirms or denies an idea. Yes. For example, President Buhari has dissolved his cabinet yesterday. This can either be true or false. But class, as the name implies, they are still making a declaration. Another example is Mustafa has not registered his courses. You see, this can either be true or false, but it is what? A statement. It is a declaration. Nigeria is the richest country in Africa. It can either be true or false, but whatever the case, it is what we call a declarative sentence. Now, the second category is what we call interrogative sentence. That is the type of sentence that is used to ask questions and ends with what? Question mark. This sentence is used to ask a question, and it usually ends with what? Question mark. For example, when did Nigeria get her independence? This is a question, right? 1. Are you aware that the economy has improved? It's another question also that represents interrogation. So you can see, whenever you see an interrogative type of sentence, its main function is to ask a question in communication, or in writing, or in speeches. And the next category is what we call exclamatory type of sentence. This sentence type shows a sudden feelings or emotions. As such, it ends with what? What we call an exclamation mark. It is a kind of expression that has some emotions, either happiness, either somebody who is angry, either somebody who is surprised. In as much as it has some kind of emotions in it, then the sentence is termed exclamatory in terms of what? Function. Now, examples such as what? Oh, yes, what a nice idea. So you can see how somebody is making an emotion through his voice. Yes. So we also have wish. Wish, or what we call desire, is sometimes called optative type of sentence. It expresses a wish or a hope or something that is happening soon. For example, I wish you best of luck in your forthcoming exams. I hope to be a graduate in the next couple of months. So you see, these are wishes that somebody can wish himself or someone else. So any wish in functions as an optative type of sentence, or it can be called as wish or desire. Then the next one is what we call command. It's a sentence that functions in terms of given command. Therefore, this sentence type is used to give an order or command. The subject in this sentence is what? Mostly implied, not necessarily obvious. The sentence ends mostly with an exclamation mark. For example, you move out of this place. You get out. You close that door. You close the book. Right? So the voice sounds commanding as you are giving directive to someone else. So command is usually directing someone to perform an action or to do some job. Yes. And finally, we have what we call request. This sentence type lies in the interface between a command and a wish. The language used is mostly polite, and the sentence ends with a question mark. For example, could you please shut the door? You see, you are not commanding someone and you are not wishing him something, right? I go out to see a friend, you're asking a question, but in what? In a more polite manner. That's why we said this kind of, or this type of sentence is an interface between command and a wish, because you're not giving command, you are just kind of wishing something, right? Therefore, it comes in between. Look at the way examples were given. So that's why we said it is an interface between wish and what? And command. So this commands type of sentences functionally. Now, with all this little discussions class, this brings us to the end of our discussion on items in Module 2, that is Lecture 1, where we explain word classes and sentence types, If you can remember, class, we have seen how part of speech are divided broadly into open and closed classes. That is to say, when we say open class, we are talking about nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. And pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections are what are referred to as closed class system, respectively. We have also taken sentence types based on structure and what functions, if you remember, right? Together with their different types and examples. We can now switch to the slides and voicing of the remaining items in module 2 of in the lecture 2 of the same module, because I don't want you to assume that this is the end of the module 2. No, this is only the part 1 of the module 2, which you should expect the the lecture 2 of the module to come out in the next, or rather subsequent slide that is coming out. So thank you very much. Inshallah, we shall see in the next lecture, which talks about the other aspect of module 1, which is the basic grammar, in our next voice, or rather next slides, that is to do with lecture 2, I mean module 2, lecture 2, inshallah. Thank you very much.